Hi there, I'm Sue Cook and I'm a neurodevelopment specialist, and I come from a long line of parents, and parents must have been pretty good, mustn't they? Because I'm still here and we tend to care about our children. But hey, our ancestors mustn't have cared all that much about their parents because they're not here. And maybe that's what I'm here to change. Okay, being light-hearted, but um, so I'm a brain specialist, and what I do is I work with children primarily who've got learning issues, dyslexia through autism. And what we know is that during development, neurotypical development always happens in the same way. If we imagine this as a timeline, and where we have neurodiversity, or where somebody isn't neurotypical, then they've deviated from that process of neurotypical development at some point. So in other words, things haven't gone to plan. If we simplify that quite a bit, if we think about learning to drive, when you're first of all sitting in the car those first few weeks, and you've got to deal with all of the things that are going on outside the car, different pressures on your feet, the left hand one, the one that deals with clutch goes down hard, the accelerator pedal, the brake pedal, it's much more calibrated, and then you have to deal with all the road signs, and you have to deal with all of the whatnot that's going on around you, and at first it's completely overwhelming. And then you keep doing it and you keep doing it and you keep doing it, and then there comes a point where you start to get it, and then there comes a point where it's all completely automatic. Now, the way you achieved that was by practicing and by doing and repeating and learning and recalibrating so that everything's working tickety-boo. And what happens in our schools with our little ones with learning issues is they haven't done the learning to drive process, and yet we expect them to be able to, because something has happened that's made them neurodiverse. And so what happens is these children get shouted at, and people say, why can't you drive? Everyone else in the class can drive. You should know better. You're lazy. You're this, you're that. But if you can imagine that saying, the reason why I'm using this as an example is because if you say to somebody who's never learned to drive, why can't you drive? Everyone else can do it. It's completely easy. Everyone else has done it and you can't do it. And they come out with some mad ideas. And if we look at it in that context, it's really easy to see that they haven't learned to drive. So why should they be able to? And yet with our children, it's like we don't accept that there's been a gap in their development, which has made them not able to keep up with their peers. And that's exactly the same thing. And so when we want to create a neurotypical brain, or a more neurotypical brain for somebody who's had learning issues, we take them back to the beginning. So we take them back to the first day of their learning to drive process, and we take them gently through it. And it takes time, because I bet none of you learned to drive in a day, did you? I bet you didn't. I bet it took some months, unless you were absolutely exceptional. And what we have in the older part of our life is we become inactive. Now, as you know, if you do a lot of weightlifting and bodybuilding and you get your muscles all big, if you don't use your muscles, you lose them, don't you? Well, the same happens in the brain. It's called selective apoptosis. And so when we're getting older and we tend to sit around more, or we've had an accident, or we're in hospital or whatever, and we're not moving, then bits of our brain that control or look after our balance and our vision and so on, they stop working as effectively as they might, or they might just break down altogether. And so when we try and get up and walk across the room, we fall over, break our hip, or we can't remember things, or our memory goes. All of these things can be worked upon. All of these things can be recreated if you know how. Now, the way we achieve that is exactly the same way that you achieve the neurotypical development in the early child. So we repeat those developmental stages to recreate the brain you wanted. And that is what we've done with the program, the exercise class that I have just launched called Core-CR. We're going right back to basics with it, but we've made it absolutely accessible. And that's what's so different about it. And that's what's really, really key, is that we have made it accessible and simple for anybody, right through from being not very fit at all, or in fact fairly immobile, up to being quite athletic. So it works really well, or the same, on people like me who are healthy and feel young and want to remain that way, as well as it does on people who've already lost a degree of mobility or flexibility or whatever. And we've been testing it, and the results have been absolutely amazing over the past year, just over the last year. It's been really, really phenomenal. And our new website's up. It's called core-cr.co.uk. Do have a look. You can learn there about where we've got our classes, a little bit about the science, interviews with me, and training. And something else that's also relevant here, which is interesting, I think, is that you never hear a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old or a 3-year-old say, "Oh no, my tummy's getting really flabby, I have to do my sit-ups." And the reason for that is because they're doing whole body exercise and they're active. And that's exactly what we're doing with core and with the neurodevelopment exercises I teach. They really are working the most fundamental parts of you. And so you don't need to do spot toning on your stomach or whatever, because it's all there in the whole body part of it. And it's not exhausting any more than a 2-year-old says, "Oh God, my stomach is really hurty, I've done too much." It's the same. You don't generally ache too much after it, because we're doing natural. I know that natural is a very difficult word to use, but we're repeating what typically happens in neurotypical development, and so that's why it's doable. And that's what I wanted to say on that, is that this is what is now available, and it is completely cutting edge. There isn't another exercise program out there that's doing this. Thank you. I'm Sue Cook.